I bought that beach house to save my marriage. A quiet place by the ocean where Catherine and I could reconnect far from deadlines, flights, and late-night meetings. But instead, she turned it into a love nest for her affair. I wasn't supposed to be there that day. A last-minute change in my schedule led me to Monterey, thinking I'd surprise my wife while she was working on an article. When I heard laughter upstairs, his laughter, something inside me shattered. I could have stormed in. I could have screamed, demanded answers. But I didn't. I walked out without saying a word, because I knew revenge is best served cold. If you've ever felt that gut-wrenching betrayal, the kind that knocks the air out of your lungs, you'll understand why I did what I did next. I didn't just catch them, I made sure they would never forget the moment their secret world collapsed. What would you do if your spouse brought their lover into your home? Stay with me because this isn't just a story about infidelity. It's about staying calm when your heart is in pieces and delivering a response so calculated, so devastating that they'd wish you had just yelled instead. Let me tell you how I turned heartbreak into the perfect revenge. I used to believe that distance made the heart grow fonder. For 11 years, Catherine and I built a life around that idea. She was always somewhere, Paris, Tokyo, Cape Town, chasing stories as a travel journalist. And me, I stayed in San Francisco, managing portfolios and advising clients who trusted me with their futures. We told ourselves we were a power couple, independent, ambitious. But behind closed doors, we were strangers passing through the same house at different times. That's why I bought the beach house in Monterey. It wasn't just a luxury, it was supposed to be our place. A quiet retreat where we could escape the chaos and remember why we chose each other in the first place. At first it felt like hope. Weekend getaways, late-night walks on the sand, coffee on the porch as the sun came up. But those moments became rare. Her deadlines piled up, my clients demanded more. And soon the house sat empty more often than not. I should have noticed the signs, the missed calls, the vague explanations. The way she stopped asking when I'd be free to join her at the beach house. But when you love someone, you don't look for cracks. You patch them up and tell yourself everything's fine. It wasn't until that Friday afternoon that reality hit me like a freight train. My assistant had accidentally double-booked a client meeting. With my afternoon suddenly free, I thought, why not drive down? Catherine was already at the beach house, supposedly working on a feature piece with a tight deadline. I smiled at the idea of surprising her. Maybe we'd have dinner by the water, open a bottle of wine, pretend like old times. I even stopped by her favorite bakery on the way, picked up those almond croissants she loved. It was almost romantic. Until I pulled into the driveway and saw that car, a sleek black sedan I didn't recognize. At first I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe a photographer or an editor she was collaborating with. I didn't want to interrupt if she was in the middle of work, so I parked down the street and walked up the back path, quiet, unannounced. The sliding door was unlocked. It always was when she stayed alone. I stepped inside, expecting to hear the click of a keyboard or the hum of her voice on a conference call. But what I heard was laughter, hers and a man's, soft at first, playful. Then footsteps above me, moving toward the master bedroom. I froze. My mind raced for explanations, any excuse that could make this not what it sounded like. But when I heard the unmistakable sound of a bed creaking, the truth hit harder than I was prepared for. I stood there holding that stupid box of croissants, feeling like the biggest fool on the planet. I don't know how long I stood in that kitchen listening to the sounds of betrayal happening just a floor above me. A minute. 5. Eventually something inside me clicked. I set the box down on the counter, turned around and walked out the same way I came in without making a sound. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't even let myself feel angry. Yet I drove to a hotel a few miles away, checked in and sat alone in the dark. That's when the numbness wore off and the real pain set in. 11 years, all the sacrifices, all the times I defended her busy schedule, told friends and family that we were solid. And now she was upstairs with another man in a house I bought with my inheritance. I could have confronted her right then, but something told me that wasn't enough. Catherine didn't deserve a shouting match. She deserved to feel exposed, vulnerable. The same way she made me feel in that moment. So I reached for my phone, not to call her, but to call someone else, a lawyer. Because if Catherine wanted to play games, I was about to change the rules. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, Catherine, and whoever he was laughing in my house in my bed. But by morning, my pain had crystallized into something sharper, clearer. I wasn't going to let this destroy me. No, I was going to turn this betrayal into an opportunity. The first call I made was to my lawyer, Richard. We'd worked together for years. He handled my estate planning investments, and thankfully the prenuptial agreement Catherine had once called a mere formality. When I told him what I discovered, Richard didn't ask if I wanted a divorce. He simply asked, "How do you want to play this?" That question stuck with me. I could have taken the standard route, filed papers, confronted her with evidence, dragged it through court. But something about that felt unsatisfying. Catherine was clever. She'd spin the narrative play, the victim, maybe even convince people we had grown apart. I didn't want closure. I wanted clarity. For her, for him, for everyone involved. So I told Richard to give me some time. I needed to think. That's when I started digging. I spent hours combing through our shared bank accounts and credit card statements. It didn't take long to find the Trail Hotel bookings, restaurant bills, suspicious business expenses that didn't add up. One charge in particular caught my eye. A boutique hotel in Napa Valley booked nearly 8 months ago. It was the first in a long string of transactions tied to Catherine's affair. The date matched a weekend she claimed to be on assignment in Seattle. I felt my stomach twist. This wasn't a recent fling. It was a carefully hidden double life. And that's when Tang Leo Thang Thu 3 hit me. Buried in one of the receipts was a name I recognized, Andrew Collins. It took me a moment to place it, but when I did, I almost laughed at the irony. Andrew was a former client, a slick-talking entrepreneur I had refused to work with years ago after uncovering shady dealings in his financials. I remembered warning him, "Shortcuts catch up to you." Apparently, he'd found another way into my life through my wife. Now, this wasn't just personal, it was poetic. Catherine hadn't just betrayed me with anyone. She chose a man I already knew was a fraud. Did she know about our history? Was this some twisted form of rebellion? Or was she simply blinded by Andrew's charm, the same charm I'd seen through in a single meeting? Either way, it fueled my resolve. I wasn't dealing with two lovers caught in a mistake. I was dealing with two liars, each playing their own game. But they underestimated one thing. I don't lose games. By midweek, I had a plan forming, not revenge, driven by rage, but by precision. I confirmed through Catherine's calendar that she'd be returning to the beach house that weekend. No surprise there, she probably thought her secret was safe. That I was still oblivious back in San Francisco. I made a few calls. A professional cleaning and staging company owed me a favor after I helped their owner secure a major investment deal. I gave them specific instructions detailed down to the last inch. The master bedroom needed to become an exact replica of that Napa hotel room. Same furniture style, same bedding, same lamps. I even sent them photos pulled from the hotel's website. But that was just the beginning. I printed every text message I recovered from our synced cloud account. Highlighting the ones where Catherine lied to me while making plans with Andrew, I framed them like artwork. I ordered in large copies of hotel receipts, dinner bills, even a photo I found on Andrew's public social media carefully cropped, so Catherine's reflection in the window was visible. Above the bed, I had them mount a timeline, dates, locations, and expenses, laying out their affair like a corporate presentation. And in the center of the bed, I placed a single envelope. Inside was a letter from Richard outlining the divorce terms per our prenup. Clean, brutal, non-negotiable. By Friday afternoon, everything was in place. Standing in that room, I felt calm. For the first time since I'd walked out of that house, I wasn't consumed by heartbreak. I was in control. This wasn't just a trap. It was a mirror forcing Catherine and Andrew to face exactly who they were. I locked up and left before they arrived. All that was left was to wait for the fallout. As I drove away from the beach house, I knew there was no turning back. This wasn't a bluff. This wasn't a warning shot. It was checkmate. But I wasn't done yet. Not entirely. I wanted to make sure Andrew Collins understood exactly who Catherine was before he stepped foot into that bedroom. See, Andrew wasn't just some random affair. He was a con man, always calculating his next move, always looking for leverage. I knew his type because I'd already shut him down once. So I sent him an anonymous email, simple, direct. Attached was a single file, a PDF containing snippets of Catherine's messages, where she promised him things she had no intention of delivering. The divorce is almost finalized. Gregory barely pays attention anymore. Soon it'll just be us, no more secrets. Lies, every word of it. And at the bottom of that email I wrote, before you walk into the beach house tonight, ask yourself how many other lies has she told you. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. By the time Catherine and Andrew arrived that evening, I was already checked into a hotel 2 towns over, sipping whiskey and watching the sunset. I didn't need to witness the explosion. I could imagine it perfectly. Catherine unlocking the door, leading Andrew inside like everything was normal. Heading upstairs, maybe laughing, maybe ready to pick up where they left off, and then silence. The kind of silence that only comes when your entire world tilts beneath your feet. I pictured Andrew's face when he saw the framed messages, the receipts, the timeline exposing every lie they thought was buried. I could almost hear Catherine scrambling for words, her mind racing for an explanation that didn't exist. But Tang Leo Thang Thu 5 wasn't just about the room. It was about Andrew realizing in real time that Catherine had been playing him too. The man who thought he was seducing a neglected wife now saw the truth. He was just a pawn in Catherine's game. A convenient escape from her marriage wrapped in promises she never intended to keep. I didn't have to wait long for confirmation. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. You're colder than I thought. Don't worry, you won't hear from either of us again. I smiled. Andrew got the message loud and clear. But Catherine, she was a different story. By morning, I had 3 missed calls and a string of frantic voicemails. Her voice cracked between anger, desperation, and denial. Gregory, we need to talk. This isn't what you think. Please just call me back. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Later that day, Richard sent over confirmation that the divorce papers had been delivered. The terms were brutal, just as we planned. Catherine would walk away with exactly what the prenup allowed. No more. I knew she'd signed. She didn't have a choice. Facing a public scandal, especially with Andrew ready to cut ties, wasn't a battle she could win. But I wasn't done delivering consequences. Tang Leo Thang Thu 6 was waiting my final move. You see, Catherine's career thrived on her image. Professional, adventurous, trustworthy. Her reputation was everything in the world of journalism, so I packaged a neat little folder, nothing too dramatic, just enough screenshots, timelines, a polite cover letter addressed to her editor marked confidential. I didn't accuse her of anything outright. I simply suggested they review the attached materials and consider whether Catherine's recent conduct aligned with the publication's values. Then I mailed it. Some might say that was petty, but to me it was closure. Catherine didn't just betray a marriage she built her life on, lies both personal and professional. I wasn't about to let her walk away unscathed, ready to spin another story. As I stood on the balcony of my hotel room that evening, watching the waves crash against the shore, I felt free. Not victorious, not vengeful, just free. Because when you reach the point of no return, it's not about winning or losing anymore. It's about making peace with the fact that some bridges are meant to burn, and I was ready to watch the flames. The beauty of a well-crafted plan isn't in the moment it lands, it's in the silence that follows. That's exactly what I got after Catherine saw that bedroom. Silence. Except for the occasional, desperate voicemail I had no intention of answering, but I knew Catherine better than anyone. She wasn't the type to fall apart immediately. No, she'd scramble to regain control to salvage whatever pieces of her double life she could. That's why I had to stay 10 steps ahead. The day after Richard confirmed she'd received the divorce papers, I moved swiftly. First, I froze our joint accounts legally, of course. Per the prenup, Catherine wasn't entitled to a cent beyond what we'd agreed upon 11 years ago. No drawn-out negotiations, no chance for her to siphon off anything extra. Next, I secured the beach house, changed the locks, updated the security system. This time, the only person with access was me. I wasn't about to let her turn my sanctuary into a crime scene of memories ever again. While Catherine was busy licking her wounds, I followed through with Tang Leo Thang Thu 6, the final blow to her carefully curated reputation. It didn't take long for her editor to respond. a polite email thanking me for bringing serious concerns to their attention. By the end of the week, Catherine's profile was quietly removed from the publication's website. No headlines. No scandal splashed across tabloids. Just disappearance. That's how careers die in her world. Not with noise, but with erasure. I thought that would be the end of it. But Catherine wasn't done, not yet. A few days later, she showed up at my office, unannounced, disheveled. Nothing like the polished woman I once knew. My assistant hesitated before letting her in, but I nodded. I wanted to see her face when she realized there was nothing left to fight for. She walked in, eyes red, but still burning with that familiar defiance. "Gregory, please. We need to talk." I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever. "There's nothing to discuss, Catherine. You made your choices." She launched into excuses, how things just happened, how she felt neglected, how Andrew meant nothing once she realized what kind of man he was. I let her speak, not because I cared, but because I want her to hear how hollow her words sounded in the cold air of reality. When she finally ran out of breath, I slid a copy of the signed divorce papers across the desk. "It's done," I said quietly. "You'll receive what's outlined in the agreement. Nothing more." Her eyes filled with tears, not the kind born from heartbreak, but from defeat. "Gregory, we were married for 11 years. Doesn't that mean anything?" I looked at her for a long moment, and then I said the words I'd been holding on to since the day I walked out of that beach house. "It did. Until you decided it didn't." She left without another word, and just like that, the chapter closed. But for me, execution wasn't just about punishing Catherine. It was about reclaiming control over my life, my peace, my future. I booked a session with a therapist the following week, not because I was broken, but because I didn't want to carry the weight of betrayal any longer than I had to. I spent weekends at the beach house, not haunted by memories, but reshaping them. I repainted the master bedroom, replaced every piece of furniture, and opened the windows wide to let the ocean breeze wash away whatever lingered. Friends asked if I'd ever consider selling the place. I told them, no, that house wasn't a symbol of pain anymore. It was a reminder that staying calm in the face of betrayal isn't weakness. It's power. In the months that followed, I heard whispers about Catherine, how she struggled to find work, how Andrew blocked her number and moved on without a second glance. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The best part about executing a plan like mine is knowing that the consequences unfold all on their own. Long after you've walked away, and I had no intention of looking back, I thought I was done with Catherine, but life has a way of testing your resolve just to make sure you've truly moved on. It was about 2 weeks after she walked out of my office when I got the invitation. Not from her, but from a mutual friend, a charity gala in San Francisco. The kind of event Catherine and I used to attend together, smiling for photos, pretending our lives were picture perfect. I almost declined. But then I realized this was the final stage, not of revenge, but of closure. I showed up alone, dressed sharp head, held high. I wasn't there to prove anything to anyone, just to remind myself that I'd survived the storm. Of course, Catherine was there. I spotted her across the room, standing near the bar, trying to hold court with people who once admired her. But something was different. The confident sparkle in her eyes was gone. Her smile was forced, her posture tense, like she was waiting for whispers to start behind her back. And they did. I could hear them. People in our circle had begun to piece things together. The sudden disappearance from her job, the quiet divorce, the rumors about Andrew Collins. Catherine caught my eye. For a moment she hesitated, then walked toward me, glass of wine in hand. "Gregory?" She began, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I nodded politely, keeping my expression neutral. "Catherine." She searched my face, looking for any trace of anger, bitterness, something she could latch on to, but there was nothing left for her to find. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." It wasn't the dramatic apology some might expect. It was quiet, defeated. Because she knew everyone in that room knew whether they spoke it aloud or not, I simply replied, "I know." Then I turned away and joined a conversation across the room, leaving her standing there alone in a crowd that no longer respected her. That was the real climax, not a shouting match, not public humiliation, but the quiet realization that Catherine had orchestrated her own downfall, and I didn't have to lift a finger anymore. In the weeks that followed, the fallout continued without my involvement. Andrew Collins' name surfaced in a minor fraud investigation. Nothing major but enough to tarnish what little credibility he had. Left Catherine tried to freelance, but doors kept closing. Editors weren't eager to associate with someone whose personal scandals whispered of unreliability and poor judgment. I focused on rebuilding my life, not from ashes, but from a foundation I'd carefully preserved. Therapy sessions turned from processing pain to planning my future. I reconnected with old friends, the kind I'd drifted from, while juggling a marriage that had been hollow for years. I even took a real vacation, something Catherine and I always talked about but never actually did. No pretense, no deadlines, just me, a quiet cabin in the mountains, and the satisfaction of knowing I hadn't let betrayal define me. One afternoon, while watching the sun dip behind the pines, I realized something important. Revenge isn't about destruction, it's about restoration. I didn't ruin Catherine. She did that all on her own. All I did was hold up a mirror and let her see the truth, and that truth followed her everywhere. Months later, I heard she'd moved out of the city trying to escape the shadow she'd cast over herself. But shadows don't disappear just because you change locations. As for me, I kept the beach house. Not as a reminder of what happened, but as a symbol of what I overcame. I renovated it completely. New furniture, new memories. It became a place of peace, not pain. Sometimes when I'd sit on the porch and listen to the waves, I'd think back to that day, the moment I heard laughter upstairs and felt my world collapse, and I'd smile. Not because I was glad it happened, but because I knew that was the day I stopped being a victim and started taking back control. The fallout wasn't loud, it didn't need to be true. Justice rarely is. It's strange how quiet life becomes after the storm passes. No more late-night questions, no more wondering where she was or who she was with. Just silence. And in that silence, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. People often ask me if I regret how I handled it. If I ever wished I'd confronted Catherine face to face that day, if I'd shouted, demanded answers, made her feel the weight of my anger. The truth, no. Because anger fades. It burns hot and fast, leaving nothing but ashes. What I gave Catherine wasn't rage. It was reflection. I let her see exactly who she was without giving her the satisfaction of a dramatic scene. I learned that real strength isn't in how loud you react. It's in how calmly you respond when everything inside you is breaking. Walking away that day without a word was the hardest thing I've ever done. But it was also the smartest. I didn't let her betrayal define me. I didn't let it turn me into someone bitter or vengeful. Instead, I turned it into a lesson, one I carry with me every day. Trust is precious. Once broken, it doesn't shatter in a single moment. It crumbles piece by piece with every lie, every excuse, every quiet betrayal. And when you finally see the truth, you have two choices: become consumed by it or rise above it. I chose to rise. Catherine's story ended when her lies caught up to her. Mine began when I decided I was worth more than staying in a marriage built on deception. If there's one thing I hope anyone listening takes away from this, it's this. You don't need to scream to be heard. You don't need to fight dirty to win. Sometimes the most powerful response is to stay calm, stay smart, and let the truth do the damage for you. I rebuilt my life, not in spite of what happened, but because of it. I'm stronger now, wiser. And I know that peace isn't something you find in another person. It's something you create for yourself. Once you let go of the people who never deserved a place in your life to begin with,